Hello everybody, it's Adrian Plus here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And today, unless I'm very much mistaken, is number 217 in Sounding the Shallows. Gosh, we've sounded some shallows in our time.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it has felt in the UK, though, as though we're very far from landing on a safe shore just at the moment. I know we have friends in Australia and Canada and one or two other places. They must be seeing the images of what's been happening in the UK over this last week in absolute horror, I would have thought.
Well, what is so difficult is, for people who don't know, there are far-right groups causing absolute chaos in some of the larger towns and cities, or they have been. It seems to have abated quite a bit, but we've yet to see. We've got a weekend coming up and we'll see. But the thing about the way it makes you feel is that if you've got other things on your mind or things aren't going so well, there's a kind of abyss of fear underneath it that leaves people thinking, is everything falling apart? Because there is a sense that so many things are breaking. But actually, there's some light with this as well, which I think has really surprised people.
It surprised me. I looked on your phone first thing this morning to find out what awful things had happened last night.
Because Wednesday night was predicted to be a really difficult night.
Absolutely, that there were going to be 100 riots. Now, some people think this was a massive hoax, set out on social media. I don't know, just in order to make people very frightened. What it certainly did was galvanise police forces all over the country to be ready. There wasn't much, but there was something. And what there was quite extraordinary, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were thousands and literally thousands of people around the country.
In major cities.
It came out to actually confront those who were committing acts of violence and shouting racist comments and actually also looting shops and things.
Oh yes, in fact, the ones convicted, over 70% are known whatevers. Thugs is a quick word for it, but they're not people who are passionately anything. For a lot of them, they just have been lured into believing something and enjoyed the idea of going along with it. But these thousands of people, again, I do hope that people not in this country will see something of that on their media, because people standing there with placards saying love, not hate, we welcome refugees, we are not these people. This is not our community. And on and on. There was one quite young person who said, I've been ashamed to think that the world sees us like this. That's not who we are. Well, of course, it is who some people are. But it's been...
And there was an older man, quite a bit older man, who was asked by a reporter why he'd come. And he said, I've come to tell everybody that this isn't what we are.
Exactly.
This isn't what we want. And he was making a very powerful, non-violent, absolutely heartfelt statement about wanting to insist that we preserve the best of our communities. And the great thing about these groups and about the communication that's been happening within those groups is that these are clearly people of faith, different faiths, no faith, all ethnic backgrounds, as far as one can tell.
And for once, the church seems to have come into a little bit of good press.
Well, but I think so have the imams have been wonderful,
absolutely.
haven't they?
There was, I think we may have mentioned, I'm not sure, but there was one of the imams who came out, faced the mob, and brought them chips.
That's correct.
And talked to them.
Yeah.
There was a guy in Newcastle saying, this is my town. I was born here. This is my city. I've grown up in the school here. This is my town. And so the idea that it isn't your town, that somehow, even though you thought it was, you're now being told that you're something else. It has been horrible. And I must admit, Adrian, that I felt, how can this be countered? And it's been countered in a way by three things, hasn't it? I mean, we said I think it was just a few weeks ago, we were talking about Micah. And
Micah, the minor prophet. Yeah.
and the three things, he said, seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. And there has been seeking justice. There's been, the police and the courts and the government, people are being arrested and they are being in court. Justice is being seen to be done. But then these crowds, it's all to do with the second one, seek mercy. Don't throw stones at your opposition. Don't chuck things at them. Don't try and hurt them.
It's what made it so upsetting today that there was a man actually in he was in a very influential position. He's a member of parliament who was making horrible, violent cries to the crowd to do things to the protesters.
Yeah, and he's been suspended.
I know, but to do that really says we don't mean what we say.
Yes,
we are like you. I think one of the things that happens when these things come about, and we had riots 2 or 3 decades ago in London, is the fear in people that it is in us. That maybe we've got it wrong. That maybe our communities aren't what we thought they were, because it is a culture that has taken years to develop. But I also know there are wonderful representatives of those cultures who are saying, no, come on, we've come a long way and we don't want to lose it, and we're not going to give it away because someone else starts talking rubbish to us and shouting and really hurting people. There's been some severe damage to...
And it hasn't gone away. We're still in the middle of it, aren't we? We know there are new threats. We know... It's such a strange contrast going alongside the Olympics, where you see people so proud of themselves or so devastated when they haven't done well and they feel they've let themselves down, and everything's so immediate and so passionate, but so based on hard work and based on pushing themselves beyond the limit, which I know we talked about, muscling through, getting through.
The very significant thing about those contestants in the Olympics, I think, is that I've heard it over and over again particularly from people who haven't made it to a gold medal. I've worked for 4 years to do this, and I knew I needed to present my very best performance to do this. And one of the things that I have liked about what has happened is that...
What, you mean the people taking
a
stand?
On the street. We're presenting the best of us, what we really are at heart. Yeah. We may make mistakes and things may go wrong, but we believe in those things. I think, the majority of people... I was also reminded a bit of Malachi, book of Malachi, called by someone we met once, Malachi.
Malachi, we've always loved that. Yeah.
You always need a bit of Malachi at the end of the Old Testament.
Oh, I suspect you've probably got a limerick, have you?
I do have a limerick, which I have brought with me, about Malachi. I think Malachi means messenger. I may be wrong about that. Anyway, it goes like this. Malachi's theme, I studied for hours and hours and hours. Then God said, look here, I'll make it quite clear. I'm allergic to all garage flowers.
Yes, well, I think you need to unpack that last
Well,
slide.
I will. For those
I don't know whether people in other countries...
Well, I'm sure the same thing happens, whether it's garage flowers or not. But in England, we have often in the garages or outside the garages a selection of rather oddly coloured flowers. They seem to be brighter than flowers usually are. And if you're off to have dinner with someone or to meet somebody and it's a special occasion and you've forgotten to bring something and you want to show that you've actually done something,
without
there
too
is
much effort,
great temptation simply to stop at the garage and get some garage flowers. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that we all know what garage flowers look like now. So people will just think, I don't blame people really who think I've got to take something, I'll take these. But I think that's the point of Malachi, is that God is saying, I'm fed up with you because you bring me your lame animals as sacrifices. You give the things that don't mean anything to me. I want the best from you. I want the best of you. And you're not giving me the best. And you think that I'm going to be pleased when you do that. Well, I'm I'm not pleased, and not
it's
just
a sort of token visual thing.
Yeah, you've carried out it's like going to church and going through the liturgy and sort of thinking, how long does this go on for? And
well, I was thinking as well, Adrian, it was like a lot of, it's slightly changed actually, but Harvest Festival was always a time when people brought things to offer to God in thanks for the harvest, and quite often those things offered were from the back of the cupboard, out of date, strange things with the labels coming off it.
We've got a can of something that is about 50 years old, haven't we?
That's very important.
What would happen if we opened it?
I don't think we ever will.
Mushroom sauce?
Mushroom soup. But I don't think that's... No. But, and there will have been people who have also come along for the ride, if you like, to be standing with the people who are counter-racist. Of course there will. People who've come out. But there is something about the solidity of that I'm sure has given them hope to be the very best of themselves. Yeah. And it certainly gave me hope this morning. I as I say, I looked at the news with expecting to feel the same fear and despair of how on earth can we counter such ugliness and such aggression and such mindlessness. And then to discover more and more that actually... it was based on a load of rubbish. Really.
Yeah.
What were you
No, it's all right. I was going to say the other thing in Malachi was that there's a verse that says something about you bring false fire and put it on the altar. Is it false fire? I think it is, and it's a way of trying to show that you have a passion for what's happening, but in fact you've devised something that makes it very easy to produce. And we know about this in the church but very often people can whip up emotion and whip up stuff, or speak very easily about what it all means in the church. What we believe and what we do and all that. But what people are doing now, it's a chance to reflect on the fact that we need a genuine burning inside for this. This man I already mentioned was passionate. He was passionately wanting anyone who needs to know, whoever they are, that we really do value our culture at its best. And even if it's flawed, which it is in significant ways. But I find it quite exciting that we can set new fire to old ambitions and aims and ideals.
But maybe we also need to look at that from the point of view of these very disaffected people who are so angry and so upset that they will jump onto anything that will mean that for a little while they're part of something. I think there is, we've lost a lot. When I think of all the youth clubs and all the things for young people that have somehow got lost, and there is a lack of hope and a lack of understanding. You said about the culture, that guy obviously felt he had a culture that he was standing for. But I think there's a lot of people who don't really know what it is to, what does it mean to be British? What does it mean
for this man to say this about hurting the people who were... Because they're real people, you're quite right. And ideally, they would be part of this culture and find something new. We worked for long enough with children who came from terribly depressed or difficult backgrounds and could easily go on to do awful things. Some of them, though, had come across either something they'd learned to do or someone who approved of them.
Yeah.
And my own memory of life when I was 16 is suddenly meeting people who made me feel I was a very worthwhile person.
Yeah.
And they could have said, well, you're not like us, so we don't really want to have too much to do with you.
Yeah.
But they took me into where they were, and it changed my life, really. I was thinking about it yesterday.
So it is to do with respect, really, and an understanding that people might come from a different background, not necessarily from another country or from another ethnic background, but just different, and maybe say things in a different way, and in a way that you wouldn't, or do things in a different way.
Or be despairing and think
absolutely despairing.
Don't tell me about this love and joy and all that, because I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's not my experience.
The trouble with all this is, though, everyone will say, well, you can't be soft, and you can't. We can't let violence happen.
No, that's why I like seek justice and love mercy. Yeah. And walk humbly. Don't get above yourself, and don't start saying stupid things. I mean. There's a certain very, very rich person in America who's, to my mind, said the stupidest thing ever, to say that we're on the brink of civil war. And I think, no, we're not. Very calmly to him, if I had the chance.
Oh,
no, we're not.
There's
so much misinformation
about, and our daughter, Kate, rang me today, I spoke to her on the phone, and she made me laugh, really. It made her laugh. Although there's a very serious aspect to this. Somebody said, she'd heard somebody say that the problem with immigrants, in Britain and all that, she said it's just like the Titanic, right? It's like the Titanic. There were too many people on it, so what did it do? It sank. And Kate said, no, it didn't sink because there were too many people on it. It sank because it hit a great iceberg. But linked to that.
But just before you go on, I mean, that is the type of thing that if you don't know about the Titanic, you will think,
you might think,
and you pass it on to somebody else.
What a good point.
And the misinformation that started this whole nightmare was somebody claiming that the young man, who must have been unbelievably mentally sick, who did this horrible, horrible thing, and this is, of course, how it all started, to those 3 little girls and the other children as well, but claiming that he had come over on one of the boats the day before. So therefore, he fits into the picture of everything that people feel very strongly about. All sorts of people feel strongly about stopping the boats, and a lot of the placards and the shouting was stop the boats. So a bit of complete misinformation. He's not a Muslim. He wasn't on a boat. And those lies built into something that has caused havoc in our country.
It's usually because it sounds as though there's some truth in it. And the thing about this Titanic thing that is interesting is that obviously the Titanic didn't sink because there was too much weight of people on it. But it had
the small boats are sinking.
It had the right number of people. Yeah. But talking of boats, it didn't have enough lifeboats. That was the tragedy.
Yeah.
So what went wrong with the Titanic was that the rich people who owned it and looked after it and were very pleased to have the rich people travelling with them had not provided sufficient lifeboats, for the whole number of people who were on the ship, and that is a very strong point. But my attitude to that is to say we need to properly look after, and I mean properly look after and cater for everyone who lives here for whatever reason. And that's the best of us. And in the course of doing that, obviously, we have to tackle immigration that is causing problems.
And also take a very firm look, not just at bunging people into prison, but at the great deep roots of unhappiness, anger and dissatisfaction, and the feeling they don't really belong. They might belong in a football crowd, but they don't really belong to the country that they live in. Education has often failed them, or they've failed education. Job prospects have failed them, or they've failed to find work. I mean, it's always a two-way thing.
Oh, there's so many aspects.
But you would need something to blame. So to find something to blame is helpful.
Well, it might make you feel better, but if we are to stick to the aspects of the culture that we value, we're not going to solve any of those things. They're not going to be fueled by violence or lack of compassion or confused ideas about some sections of our community being less important than others.
Or moving into any extreme. I mean, somebody did say to me today, we mustn't forget some of the extreme behaviour on the part of some people who have not been grown up in our culture. And he referred to one or two of the atrocities that have happened. It's no good pretending that everybody who's different is great and we're not, or the other way round. And to join one of the extreme, whether it's the far right or the extreme left, or I don't know, we just have to find the truth. And the truth is the truth of love, isn't it? And that's what I loved about it.
It's a truth which doesn't adopt these ways of changing things.
Yes.
That it can be tough. It will be just, as we've said. It will have mercy where mercy is good and right and possible.
Root, yes.
And humility, so that we're not saying anyone is better than us, but and I think it's a good way to go. The thing that annoyed everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people about Jesus was that he had a very individual view of what ought to be done, and people have said sometimes, well, what he did, how did he do it, what did he have in common? And I would say that in his case, those things, justice, loving mercy, that's what that verse actually says, loving mercy, releasing people who thought they were trapped in their lives forever, and humility, the whole old concept of God come down, all that stuff. It's a good way to go. Yeah. It's a good way to go.
And wanting the best that we have in us.
Yeah.
Always looking for the best. Always giving people the impression they could be more than they were.
Yeah, that's right. It's a tall order.
And we'd love to hear what your take is on this, wouldn't we? Because I mean, we've just really been talking like I think many people all over the country and probably all over the world are talking about this with a view. And we'd certainly love to hear what you think about all this. And the truth is, we're not through it yet.
Well, we've no idea.
But we have seen such hope in some of these things, and felt that maybe good and truth.
Well, we've seen there's goodness and truth, but will it win? I think it will, but we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll probably know by next week. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.